There are a number of ways that you can create a circle of protection, and in this video I'd want to share with you 3 of the ways that you can go about doing that, as well as explain to you the difference between consecrating a space and setting up a protective space. So stay tuned for that. Hi, I'm Sandra from mysterywitchschool.com, and if you're new to this channel and you want to become a witch or a Wiccan, or you want to know more about witchcraft and Wicca, hit the subscribe button below so that you don't miss a thing. This video is about circles of protection and how you can create a circle of protection. But first, I want to talk about the difference between a consecrated space and a protective space. When we start to clear a space to work, to do some magic or to do ritual, what we do is we set the space up. And we set the space up for a number of reasons. One is to consecrate the space and make sacred. So before we do anything, we cleanse the space and clear the space of any negative energies or any energies that we don't want. So for that, we traditionally use the besom or the broom. And you can go around your space in a circular fashion and sweep all the negative energy out the front door or out of the door of the space that you're using. And that is cleansing the space. So a besom cleanses the space, it cleans the space out, and that's what it does. It doesn't create a circle of protection, and it doesn't create necessarily a consecrated space either, because it is a tool of cleaning and moving things out and away. So to consecrate the space, to make the space sacred, which is a statement saying basically to all of the spirits out there, this is a sacred space. And it's also saying it to your own psychology, your own psyche, that this is a sacred space. And this allows you to tune in then to what it is that you're doing and to tune the mundane out of what you're doing. So from an energetic point of view, consecrating a space is just naming the space as being a sacred space and calling in the deities into that space to make that space a sacred space. So a lot of the circle work that we do to consecrate a space is to use the 4 elements of consecration. So that is blending the water and the salt together and then going around the circle and sprinkling that salt water around the circle, lighting some incense as fire and air, and going around the circle with the incense. That's consecrating the space. That's setting the space up as a sacred space. So it's letting all of the spirits know, it's letting yourself know, your psyche know, your subconscious know that this is going to be a sacred space now, and that all of the mundane cares of the world are to be left behind, and you get to focus on what it is you're focusing on, whether it's a spell or whether it's a ritual or whatever it is that you're doing in your sacred space. So this is consecrating a space. It's not protecting the space as such, because you haven't focused on protection as your intent at this point. You're just naming and consecrating. And a lot of the time, consecrating a space and making it sacred is enough to bring a certain degree of protection to that space anyway, and you may not necessarily have to go any further with that, especially if it's a space that you're used to using. Not a lot happens in that space. It's unlikely to be getting negative energy from other people or other things coming and going. A consecrated space is probably just enough to work with, especially if it's your own space. But if you are working in a space where there are negative energies around coming from other people, whether they're consciously projecting energy or not, there might be negative energy around with negative people around. If you live in a neighborhood particularly that is very violent or very negative, then you may want to use a little bit more than just consecrating a space. If you are in an environment where there's known to be a certain type of spirit activity that's not particularly pleasant or friendly, then you may also want to be using a circle of protection. So there's 3 ways that you can do this protection. Number 1 is mentally doing it. So visualizing a protective energy around your space. A lot of people talk about, especially in the New Age, about imagining that there's white light surrounding you or surrounding your space. I personally tend to gravitate more towards a blue astral light, and often that light is quite fluid and sometimes can even be a bit reflective, depending on what I'm working with. So for me, it's more like a blue astral energy that you can project out into the space, and you can do this by gathering up energy through your body, through the ground. So gathering up through either through your spine or through your feet, and then projecting it out around you. And that's quite effective, especially if you're just wanting it around yourself and around a small space. You can also gather energy together through doing energy work and building up the heka or the chi between your hands and building it up till you really get a lot of energy going. Give it a purpose and then send it out into the space around you is another way that you can work with that mental projection, and also working with energy to send it out around you. That is very effective, and if you use that technique every day, it builds up. So the more you do something, not only do you get better at it, but you're also building the energy every day as well. So if every day part of your daily practice is to create a bubble of protective space around you, then that protective space is going to last longer for you. And if you're doing it every day, it's going to be much, much more effective in the long term than if you just do it every so often. These are things that need to be maintained through daily diligence and daily maintaining. It's like if you have a house, you have to do maintenance on your house. Sometimes you've got to fix the roof or the guttering, or things break down over time. And energy is the same. Energy will change over time, so you've got to keep making sure that you're keeping that around you, and you're keeping that up by doing it on a daily basis. The second way that you can put a circle of protection around yourself is calling in the elements. So when I say calling in the elements, we're talking about the elements of earth, fire, air, and water. And at each quarter, so north, south, east, and west, you would be calling in a particular element. Depending on which part of the world you live in, we do it opposite in the southern hemisphere to how it's done in the northern hemisphere. So if you're calling in the elements, you're asking them to protect your circle. So when you call them in, you actually ask them to protect your space. And working with the elements this way is something that's very common when we're setting up an actual circle of protection for workings such as magic or group work in a ritual environment. We can also do that as a solo, setting up our space, or we can just use the visualization if we're working solo, but definitely in a group environment, we would be asking either the elements to come in and protect us. So calling on, say, the element of earth. In where I'm in the southern hemisphere. So for me, earth is in the south. If you're in the northern hemisphere, earth would be in the north. And you'd say, I call in the energies of the element of earth in the south to protect the circle and bring to it solidity and strength and protection. And you'd go around and do that for the other elements as well. Depending on which hemisphere you're in, will determine where your fire and your earth will be. So next up, you can also work with the archangels, because each of the archangels have an element that they govern over as well. So you've got Gabriel with water, you have Michael with fire, you've got Uriel with earth, and you have Raphael with air. And you can call them in for those 4 quarters as well and ask them to protect your circle from all malefic energy or hindrances approaching from that direction that is their governance. So that's calling in other spirits to help protect the space, and they do add more protection to your space than necessarily you doing it all by yourself. And it also, if you're doing this every day, if you call in the angels every day, you're also developing a rapport with them, so that when you need them in an emergency, you can call on them straight away, and they are more likely to be able to help you in the way that you need help, because you've already set up a relationship with them. Another way that you can protect your circle, so the third way that you can do it, is using a physical circle. So you can either draw a circle and have magical protective symbols and names in that circle if you're in a space where you can do that, or you may If you're more into ceremonial magic, you may even have a large piece of cloth that you have already put a circle on, and whenever you start to work, you just open out the cloth and you work with that and do the ritual to enliven the symbols that are around the circle and use that as a circle of protection. A lot of people use salt and will use a circle of salt around them, or eggshells. And so you're tapping into the correspondences of salt being a protective substance, salt being antibacterial, so it is also anti-negative energy or harmful energy as well because of that. And eggshells have been traditionally used as protection as well. The only downside with using physical things like eggshells and salt is that with salt you run the risk, especially if you're working outside and you're doing it a lot. I'm not really into salinating the soil because it's not a good thing to always be salting the same space all the time from a soil point of view. And with eggshells, well, you've got to have a lot of eggshells, and that could end up being expensive depending on the size of the circle. So people don't tend to use that so much anymore, definitely not in the craft anyway. It's more of a ceremonial magical thing, but it is an option that you can use to, and just something to try, just to be a little bit different, to try all these different things and see what works best for you. I personally like to work with other spirits to help me out with these kinds of things and build a rapport with them, so that I can work with them in other ways as well and have a familiarity with them so that we work together pretty much as a team. So what I've covered today is the difference between protection and consecration, and the 3 different ways that you can set up a protective space using your mind and energy work, working with other spirits, and using physical correspondences such as salt and eggshells and writings around a circle. And if you are at the point with your Wiccan and witchcraft studies where you're almost tearing your hair out with frustration because you don't know where to start and you don't know what to do, and you really feel that you do need guidance and you do need a way of learning and knowing where to start and building on top of your knowledge and practicing and being motivated and being part of a group of people of like mind, then do check out the Mystery Witch School 101 12-month course in Wicca and Witchcraft. It's eclectic, so it's not traditional, it's eclectic, and it is for people who are wanting to take that next step with their learning and actually really have a solid practice that you can do every day to connect yourself to who you really are, to nature, to the divine, to develop that sense of an empowered life to create the life that you want to live. Thank you for watching my videos. Thank you to those subscribers out there who are supporting me by subscribing and watching my videos. If you like the video, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Sandra from mysterywitchschool.com, and I will see you on the next video. Blessed be.